The Panthers return to Madison Square Garden for the first time since the Eastern Conference Final.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, and so let's go ahead and kick off this special crossover edition here of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On Florida Panthers. This is Jon Chik with Locked On New York Rangers, joined by my good friend Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers. And Armando, we were talking, for a couple minutes before we hit record here, but I got to do this on air. Huge congratulations to you and your team for not only beating the Rangers in the conference final last year, but also going on to win the Stanley Cup in very exciting fashion. So, man, it's been a while for me. It's been more than 30 years now since I saw my team get to do that. So, I mean, man, both as a podcaster and as a fan, what's that moment like for you when the clock runs out in Game 7 against the Oilers?
I've heard more congratulations on the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup on the Locked On Network than we did in the draft. Just days after they won, I remember just looking forward to it, and then none of the front office people were congratulating the Panthers after everyone did it for the Vegas Golden Knights the previous year. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, 30 years in the making for the Panthers. I mean, they came into existence the year I was born, so. It just when you think of everything that the Panthers have gone through with changing locations from Dade to Broward, and then ownership change, rumors about relocating, the vote that they had to go through Broward County back in 2015, the 5-3 vote for the Panthers to stay, and now after the Stanley Cup run, the Panthers had a unanimous vote with the Broward County Commissioners to stay with in South Florida. Which they're going to have two different opt-ins for at least different blocks of 5 years. So the Panthers, at least until the 2040s, they're going to be in South Florida, and that's what really winning a Stanley Cup, and also along with the Violas paying off the remaining part of the debt. So they're going to actually build around the arena as well. So this Stanley Cup run is more than just winning it. It's just what it does with the community. And also, let's not forget just about how much the sport is growing for registration of kids who want to play the sport. So it has so many different effects of just more than just lifting a trophy.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. You just go back like 5 years, and it's crazy to see how far this franchise has come, and how firmly entrenched they are now as one of the top teams in the NHL, and obviously going to be staying put, no relocation or anything like that. Something else that I got to ask you about that's kind of hot off the presses here the last couple of days: Paul Maurice signing the contract extension, and he's another one. He first got there, and he took over for who was the interim coach? Brunette,
yeah.
Brunette, right. So he takes over for him. Brunette had some success. Paul Maurice, initially, the team struggled. They squeak into the playoffs. They make it to the finals and lose. But then this past year, they make it to the finals and they win. So obviously, he was getting mixed reviews when he first got there from Panther fans. But man, I mean, he just won the Stanley Cup. I got to be thinking that you and most Panther fans, you got to be feeling pretty good about this extension, correct?
Yeah, and this is, and like I said on yesterday's show, it wasn't really something that we were just wondering in the air of whether he was going to or not. It was just about, okay, just get through. That he was going to be in the last year of his deal, and then right before the game, the against the Minnesota Wild, there's an extension, and it's just, but doesn't come as a surprise. But when you win a Stanley Cup and you know that players already locked up, you already have the leader at the top for the Panthers that is going to be there, and that really also speaks to players outside of the organization whose contract might be expiring, and they see that not only the players are there but the coaches there. So it also signals that it's a nucleus that's going to remain together. So that's the great thing about that, and especially with the chance to do it again.
Yeah, it's funny how those contract extensions can really kind of just pop up out of nowhere. I'm kind of hoping that we get one for Igor Shesterkin, sooner rather than later, preferably. That's something that maybe we can dive into a little bit later in today's show. But I want to go back to last year because obviously this is a rematch from the Eastern Conference Final. And, watching that series unfold and, you see the Rangers get the 2-1 lead. And there was that part of me that's like, obviously I'm excited, but there's that part of me too that's kind of thinking like, I don't know that we really deserve to be up 2-1. You had the overtime heroics, and that's all well and good and everything. But I mean, when you kind of looked at the way that series was unfolding, and when you looked ahead to Game 4, I've never been in a situation, Armando, where my team was leading a playoff series, and yet I still felt like it was a must-win game. Like, to me, Game 4, it was like we have to take complete control of this series right now, or it could very easily go in the other direction. And lo and behold, of course, the Panthers win 3 in a row. But kind of just take me through that series too, if you could. I mean, when the Rangers win game 3 in overtime and you're down 2-1, are you nervous? Did you think they still had it? I mean, game 4 is going into overtime. Just kind of take me through all the emotions, because I've certainly talked about it from the Ranger point of view on my show. So I'd love to get your take on it too.
It's funny because when you think of game 2 for the Panthers Rangers at MSG, the Panthers had control most of that game, and then once overtime hit, the Rangers took control. But then in game 3, it was the Panthers mostly in control, did it in overtime, and then one faceoff and one missed assignment had Alex Wenberg redirect that puck into the net. I mean, if you break down that play, I mean, Sam Bennett was still hurt, so the positioning of him and Evan Rodriguez on that draw created a little bit of confusion that led to Alex Wenberg being open there. And I mean, you saw in this series that Anton Lundell and Vladimir Tarasenko really started to get going in it for them. And also, I mean, Paul Maurice said it best after that goal. He was caught on audio saying, and that's where it all turns for game 4, when you see that play from Montour down below and then back to Sam Reinhart to get the game winner for the Panthers. And then with the Corsi difference between these two teams, with the Panthers really dominating, you really felt that they really just got their forecheck going and were able to just pepper shots over and over again on Igor Shesterkin. And really, Igor was the MVP for the Rangers in that series for them, and just gave them a chance and made it a lot closer than it actually was.
Yeah, it was wild. I remember game 3, like, obviously, you know, the Rangers, they were up by 2 goals in the third period, and the Panthers took complete control, and they tie the game, and they're looking for the winner near the end of regulation. And I'm just hoping the game gets to overtime at that point. But once overtime was about to start, I can't explain why, I had this feeling that the Rangers were going to win. I was like, we're going to get one. And it goes against all logic, because anybody that watched that third period would look at it and say, like, oh, this doesn't look good. The Panthers are probably going to get this one. But then game 4 rolls around and it goes to overtime again. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know, man. I don't know how many times we can keep, coming up with this kind of overtime magic. The Rangers are 4-0 in the playoffs in overtime up to that point. And obviously the Panthers got that one and went on to win the series. But it's funny how you get like these kind of instincts and these feelings as a fan where it's going to go this way or it's going to go that way, especially with playoff overtime hockey.
Yeah. And really what it came down to was the Panthers being able to neutralize guys like Zibanejad and Panarin in that series. And really, that was the main difference. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere, man, what a series that he had, regardless of the loss in that one. So he really came out alive in that one. So the fact that they were able to match top line to top line with Barkov, with the Barkov line to that one, that really made a big difference in the series. So that was for the Panthers, really how they were able to win the series. I mean, you think about every single the matchups of when Barkov was there and Forsling against superstars of the first 3 rounds. When you think of Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, Pasternak, and then in the Eastern Conference Final, you look at Panarin and Zibanejad there, and every time there was an opportunity for them to match up, even in that series, which was the only series where they didn't have home ice. They found a way to just get their changes necessary when they did get the pucks in deep and got in on their forecheck to be able to match at the time.
Absolutely. And so, obviously, again, the first time these two teams are meeting since last year's playoff run, and we'll get into like predictions and whatnot and players to watch a little bit later. But for right now, do you think there's like a little bit of a carryover? Because this series did get chippy at times in the conference final, as pretty much every playoff series does. I don't know. I think if you're the Rangers, I don't think you want to be like too focused on like, oh, revenge game and this, that, and the other thing. You got to go out and play your game and execute. But these guys are human. They knew they went through this battle last year on both sides. Do you expect a chippy game? Because I think it could happen. It might be something small that kind of lights the fuse, so to speak.
I mean, possibly. I mean, when you see across the ice, it's the team that beat you. I expected to get chippy between the two. I mean, let's not forget that Chris Kreider attempted to throw the mouth guard of Matthew Tkachuk, which he would have gotten a misconduct if it went over for the glass. So that's another thing for that series at the time. So possibly it could get chippy in between and after the whistles for this. So and also for the Panthers, they gotta watch out for the Trouba train. I know the hit that he had on Barron from Tuesday. I did not think it was anything egregious, no extension there, but we all know that when they also see Jacob Trouba on the ice, that it's something to just have your head on a swivel for on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I might as well give my take on it too. It's one of those things where I didn't think there was anything like overly egregious either. The elbow was down. The elbow came up, but it was after the contact. His skates were on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things where he is starting to build this reputation. And apparently, no discipline coming. So that's obviously, a good thing for the Rangers. But I was kind of holding my breath a little bit just because, certain players, they build a reputation for themselves. And sometimes I think the league does take notice when it's somebody that's perceived to be, a repeat offender. But I figure we'll keep everything rolling in a second here, Armando, where we'll talk about the start that both of our teams are off to thus far this season. We will do all that fun stuff, make some predictions in just a minute.
But first, we're going to tell you guys all about FanDuel. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. And for everyone listening to this who's a New York Ranger fan who is also a fan of the Yankees, you could if you want to look at any bets in relation to the World Series, which starts on Friday night from Los Angeles, you can do that all at FanDuel. And also with both the New York Jets and the Giants in action, with the Jets visiting the Patriots and the New York Giants visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers, you can also look in at all the money lines and over-unders on FanDuel. And for everything on the on the South Florida and Miami side of things, the Dolphins will be at home against the Arizona Cardinals, and the Miami Heat season has also started. So you could put $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, and you, after you place your $5 bet. Once again, you could get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet, and you could do that all at FanDuel.com.
All right, so we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling here on this very special crossover edition of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Panthers. And Armando, obviously both teams off to, a solid start this season. Rangers at 5-0-1, the Panthers at 4-3-1. How does everything look in general? It seems like they've, at least avoided the dreaded Stanley Cup hangover. And obviously this is a team that I think a lot of people figure is in a great position to make another deep run. Didn't lose anybody too significant as far as like free agency or anything. So just your thoughts on how it's going so far overall, for this Panther team early in the season here.
Yeah, I mean, Alexander Barkov is still out. He hasn't been in the lineup since he unfortunately collided in the boards with Timmy Stützle in their second game of the season on the empty net goal by Ottawa, and he didn't practice. He did IR skate on his own, so he's going to remain out for this one. Paul Maurice likes to at least put guys at least in one practice before playing. Jonah Gadjevich is still out for them, and this will be Matthew Tkachuk's second game back from after a little bit of a minor procedure that he had. But hey, the Panthers are getting points for them on the season, and it's crazy because they're also they're doing it pretty impressively on the power play as well. Sam Bennett leads the team in power play goals. He has 5 goals on the season. Sam Reinhart and Anton Lundell are the ones really truly stepping up for the Panthers here. I mean, Lundell and Reinhart really got things going a few seasons ago when they were on a line, and for them, just really the also the different pieces that you've had to flip-flop around on the power play. I mean, after the first game of the season, Adam Boquist gets hurt after taking a puck in the mouth on a clear, and then misses a game, comes back in the game against Buffalo on the Saturday of the first week of the season. So there's been a lot of shifting for both sides of special teams, but the Panthers have been able to just really just get through this at right now. And I mean, their point streak unfortunately came to an end on Tuesday after a really a performance that I felt that lacked a lot of effort. But I mean, when you have that effort and then you're coming back against a team that you are very familiar with, as Paul Maurice says, you don't need any coffee to wake yourself up for a matchup like this, especially in a venue like MSG, which I hate that the one and only matchup between the Panthers and the Rangers at MSG is this early in the season. But hey, that's how the NHL schedule works. But hey, it's gonna be a fun environment, and players love going on the road and playing there.
Well, that's the one matchup before we meet again in the Eastern Conference Final. There's going to be at least a few more when both our teams make it back there. But yeah,
Fair
no,
enough.
it's going to be. Oh, go ahead.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And also speaking of Eastern Conference Final and then chances to get there for the Rangers. I mean, for everything that and all the questions in the offseason. I mean, I know there was a lot of speculation on whether Trouba was going to be traded because of everything that was going on with his wife and being in school, but also with everything on the future. I mean, there was a matchup between the Rangers and the Red Wings just in their third game of the season, where after the performance, Derek Lalonde went out into the media and say, "Oh, I know why he rejected 11 million." I'm like, "Whoa!" And and of course, Igor Shesterkin reportedly is not happy that that report is out there. But there's also a weird narrative of, oh, Igor shouldn't be paid more than Artemi Panarin, and wow, look at the start that Panarin has had. But it's not if, it's about when the he's going to get paid that big dollar contract for him. And the thing is, for the Rangers, those contracts are only going to intersect for 1 year. So it feels like there's a lot of pressure for the New York Rangers to try to do something this year before the bill really comes due, because a lot of guys are going to just possibly be squeezed out. I mean, Capo Caco is off to a great year so far. That whole third line, 0 goals against at 5-on-5 from what I'm seeing on Natural Stat Trick. But also guys who could be squeezed out as well as a Keandre Miller too. So that's another thing that I just look at this roster, and I just look at the future for the, at least the immediate future for the New York Rangers. It looks like that there's going to be a lot of pressure here, because I mean, the division for the Metro, there's a chance that they could win the division again, because Carolina, there's questions there. Obviously, Washington improved. New Jersey was expected to get back here. This might be Philly's real rebuild year. Pittsburgh can't make stops in their own end. So there's a big chance that whoever wins the Metro might be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference once again.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And, as it pertains to, this being, we saw Jacob Trouba, all the drama with him in the offseason. Then you've got all the stuff with Igor Shesterkin as well. And it wouldn't be a real New York Ranger offseason if there wasn't at least some drama to it. As far as Igor Shesterkin, rejecting that offer, I see both sides of it, because Igor Shesterkin, now that seems like a generous offer, making him the highest paid player at his position in the history of the sport. So I can understand the fans being a little bit upset with him, maybe even calling him a little bit greedy. I mean, the fans have every right to feel that way. By that same token, though, something that I've talked about on my show, Igor Shesterkin, he can play it any way he wants as well. He's got that right on top of, the fans feeling how they want to feel. He can do it the way that he wants to do it. But, to me, I'm not really that surprised that a new deal hasn't been reached between those two, because there's really no reason for Igor Shesterkin to blink first to sign his extension. I mean, I guess in theory, he could get hurt. Knock on wood, we don't want that to happen. But in all likelihood, he's going to have another really, really strong season. And if he gets to the end of this year and he still doesn't have a contract, well, now he can talk to other teams in addition to the Rangers, possibly leverage that against the Rangers and get whatever kind of a contract he wants. But from the Rangers' perspective, I mean, they're offering him $11 million a year. And again, making him, if you were to accept it, the highest paid goalie in the history of the sport. And there's other really good goalies that have signed contracts recently. I don't put them quite at the level of Igor, but they're pretty close. Who was that?
I agree.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. So, I mean, guys like Saros, guys like Ottinger, the Ottawa goalie, Omar, he signed an extension lately. Yeah, it's all like $8 million a year, 8.25, 8.5, somewhere in that ballpark. So for Igor to want like 12 million, 13 million, I mean, I feel like he is better than those goalies, but is he like 5 million better? Is he 4 million better? That remains to be seen. And I'm very curious to see how this thing is going to play out. I do feel like ultimately a deal will get done, but I feel like right now, Ranger fans, we're all holding our breath, at least a little bit.
And it doesn't help that Lafreniere is projected around like 7-8 million as well, with how he came on the scene last year. And I mean, it took him a while, but great situation for him to go to, and just he's gonna be the guy on the forward line for the New York Rangers, is gonna lead the way once the contract of Panarin comes up. I mean, you're still gonna have some continuity in the future with former Panther Vincent Trocheck. So that's also gonna help with things, even if the cap is a little tight next year. The year after, things will maybe start to open up a little bit and maybe a little more space. I mean, the Panthers are kind of looking at that post Bobrovsky, because him and Panarin's contracts expire at the same time. So they're kind of similar in how they're going to manage things going forward for the two former Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting how like the salary cap can be really tight, but then all of a sudden a couple of contracts come due and they expire, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, we've got like $20 million in cap space here. That's a great point that you made there with, Panarin and Trouba. Not this offseason coming up, but the one after that, they'll both be free agents. Do you look to keep Panarin? I think that's certainly something that could be on the table, although you have to be a little bit careful with the length of it and the amount of money being paid. But yeah, I mean, really, it's just the next offseason that I think is going to be the one that's going to be difficult for the Rangers to navigate. But the Panthers were kind of not so much like acquiring outside help this past offseason, but a couple of in-house deals. I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of these. Carter Verhaeghe, 8 years at $7 million a pop, and Anton Lundell, 6 years at $5 million. I love that Lundell contract. I think that's going to be like a steal going forward. And the Verhaeghe one is good too. But just your thoughts on them locking up some of their important players for the foreseeable future here.
Yeah, and Carter Verhaeghe, although he hasn't gotten on this, he hasn't scored a goal so far this season. I mean, he's a guy who could pop 30 a season, and that's all. That when you know that there's a guy who could do that on your lineup, you're also there's that trust factor there. And also for Lundell, it's kind of the same trajectory as Barkov. A lot of people like to use baby Barkov, but when Barkov got his first deal post ELC, it was a 6-year deal for him. So that was slowly that build of saying, okay, it's not gonna be that 3-year bridge deal. It's gonna be a little bit longer. We're gonna fill some veterans around you, and then once that deal, once the older guys could come off the books, because the Panthers, once Lundell's contract is up, so will Barkov's, so will Tkachuk's, and a lot of no trade protections for the Panthers will also come off as well, like Reinhart, Gustav Forsling. So that's another thing that is not only in 2030. There will be a lot of the resetting of the books, but a lot of no trade protection for the core guys that they have. So this 6-year window that the Panthers have, it's going to be really the meat of their contention window.
Makes sense. So I figure we'll keep everything rolling in just a second here, and we'll get into some matchups to watch, some predictions, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff. We will do that in just a second.
But first, we're going to tell you guys all about Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And the Game Time Picks, the curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. And the seat views, you could get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And it's the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
And today's special crossover episode of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Panthers is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, so we'll keep everything rolling here on this very special crossover edition here. And Armando, somebody I got to ask you about. He's off to a fantastic start this season. Obviously, had a huge hand in the Panthers, ultimately completing the journey last year. Reinhart, he's been fantastic. 5 goals and 7 assists in 12 games. What are you seeing from him so far this season? What's the key to his success?
Just creating plays and also just getting back to that net front that he's always on for him, and just knowing that Barkov is out, that he's a reliable two-way player that's going to play in all situations for the Panthers. So along with adding that on the score sheet, I mean, it's crazy to think that just 2 seasons ago it took him 10 plus games to get his first goal of the season, which he got 2 goals against the Anaheim Ducks on a West Coast trip back in the 2022-23 season. But also for him able to just knowing that guys were out of the lineup, and the fact that the new contract for him wasn't going to hold him back from continuing to play his style of game for the Florida Panthers. So that's a thing for the Panthers there. But for this one, I also want to ask you just about that third line that, as mentioned earlier, for the New York Rangers, Will Cooley, Filipino, and Capo Caco. I mentioned 0 goals against for them, but also the top 4 D for the New York Rangers has been the key for this matchup. I mean, both pairs have an expected goals percentage of over 58. The top pair of Miller and Adam Fox is over 70% on the season. But so it's not just Igor Shesterkin carrying the load for them. The stat sheet might say Panarin might be the leading point getter, and there might be a wide gap, but it doesn't tell the whole story on just how well that third line is playing for the New York Rangers.
Yeah, the third line really basically just kind of hit the ground running this season. And, people were kind of joking on social media, but honestly, it's only a half joke that the Mika Zibanejad line with Kreider and Smith, which is often kind of listed and seen as the Rangers' top line, even though the top line is really the Panarin line. But people were kind of joking like, well, they're down to the third line now. And it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but with how well that third line is played, it's really not much of one. I talked about them extensively in our last episode because for a while there, they're playing great hockey. They're dominating possession. As you mentioned, they have not given up a goal against while they've been on the ice the entire season, which is fantastic. It feels like they spend the entirety of their shift in the offensive zone, multiple times per game. And the only kind of bummer was that they weren't really getting rewarded with a ton of goals. I mean, a couple here and there, Hedl had 1 or 2. Kako, not until this last game did he get his first goal of the season. And Cooley, I think, had like 1 or 2 as well. But man, they went off in this last one. And it's funny because the episode before that, I joked that well, maybe they'll combine for 6 points and then I'll finally have some time to talk about them a little bit extensively. They combined for 8 points. They've been awesome. And it's just a lot of fun to see. I mean, Filipino, that alone is an awesome story because he dealt with all the concussions last year, only played 10 regular season games, got back for a handful of playoff games at the end there. Just the fact that he got back on the ice was amazing. And you just got to keep your fingers crossed with him that, he can stay healthy. And obviously the concussion, that's 100% no fault of his own. But, I said coming into the season, this dude is the ultimate X factor for the New York Rangers. And then Will Cooley, kind of known for being more of a hard hitter, but he's got more to offer offensively, I think. And we're starting to see some of that from him. And Kako, I mean, strong defensive forward, but in terms of being the number 2 overall pick, the offensive numbers haven't quite, reached those levels. So it's interesting. All 3 of these guys are at kind of a unique point in their career. I think all 3 of them kind of need each other right now. And they've been awesome. I mean, these guys are hungry and they're going out there, they're getting after it. And Armando, man, I mean, your team just won the cup. You know that you need to be able to roll 4 lines and you need to feel good about everybody that you're putting on the ice. You can't just rely on 2 or 3 superstars to carry you. So seeing this line play this well this early, hopefully it's a sign of what's to come. And hopefully, this is the strongest version of this third line that we've seen in some time here.
Yeah, and the Panthers are going to have to match it up with their third line in Jesper Boquist and along with Mackie Samoskevich and Evan Rodriguez for them, and also for that it's been a little bit of a shuffle for them, and with Mackie Samoskevich, this is his first real full NHL season that he's likely going to get, and and how he's able to use his hands and also create some deception, and also how he skates around in zone, and also how he goes north south. It's going to be an interesting matchup for this one for this matchup for as these two teams get together. But let's go to our important matchups and predictions for this Eastern Conference final matchup. One thing that the Panthers really did well was when they got the pucks deep, especially when I forget who Keandre Miller was paired with during the playoffs last year. He wasn't paired with Adam Fox. I believe he was paired with Trouba.
It depends what part of the playoffs. I think for the Panther series, he was back to Trouba. It was Schneider earlier in the playoffs, but I think it was usually Trouba. Yeah.
So I felt like every time it was Jacob Trouba or Keandre Miller when the Panthers got the pucks deep, the Panthers, when they were able to force turnovers and get their active sticks, that's really when they really truly made a lot of their off-script goals. There was one goal where Trouba went for a hip check, and then the Panthers finished on a breakaway after that once they gained the zone. So that's really a big key for me with the Panthers, and in order to just get the higher percentage shots on Igor Shesterkin, because you got to get a lot of shot volume on Igor, which I'm seeing that the New York Rangers, their Corsi percentage is just under 51%. I mean, the Panthers, they're 53%, and they still found a way to lose against the Minnesota Wild, who theirs is under 47. So that's another thing that for the Panthers, they need to find a way to pepper those shots, gain the zone, and also take away the net front, because we know that Chris Kreider can be a little bit of a pest there, and also what Kreider can also do shorthanded. So that's nothing to sniff at.
Yeah, for sure. And, watching the conference final last year, going back to what we were talking about, that's one of the biggest reasons why you watch that series unfold. And when the Rangers were up 2-1, where I'm kind of wondering, do we really deserve to be up 2-1? The biggest difference to me, and the reason why I think the Panthers were, to that point outplaying the Rangers, is because of that forecheck. They're just absolutely relentless. They're heavy. And once they get the puck into the offensive zone, I mean, it's hard to get it out. And even if you do, even if you survive all the pressure that the Panthers are throwing at you, by the time you get out of your zone, you're gassed. And basically all you can do is just dump the puck and go off for a change. And that's why I think that series kind of got away from the Rangers a little bit. They were, pinned back in their own zone for such a high percentage of it. It almost feels like, the Panthers, they're just kind of leaning on you until you fall over. And that's, what ultimately happened in that series. And I'm sure they'll look to do something similar. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye from my team on Mika Zibanejad in this game too, because, he's had a great career. He's been a great Ranger. He does come under fire from Ranger fans sometimes, though. You look at his numbers right now, it looks fine. 2 goals and 4 assists in 6 games. You'll take that. But I think one of the reasons why Ranger fans occasionally get upset with him is that he doesn't, when they're playing an elite team like the Panthers and he's got to go up against, Reinhart or Bennett or whoever it might be, there's times where he kind of fades into the background a little bit. And, so for that reason, I'm looking for him to hopefully have a big game and kind of answer his critics in that way in this game.
Yeah, and I'm seeing no power play goals from Mika Zibanejad, and we know what he can do from that bumper position on the power play. Artemi Panarin from the left side, when you go cross ice on a one-timer, I'm seeing he has 3 power play goals on the year, 5 power play points total. So that's another thing for that the Panthers really need to look out for. And I mean, the fact that the Rangers are also doing this on not only even strength, but also they're 6th in the NHL on the power play, 7th on the penalty kill. So that's just outstanding for what they're doing so far in this season. So those are 2 guys that the Panthers really need to at least hone in on. And of course, Adam Fox, who can quarterback a power play, which a lot of people, I feel like, even though Adam Fox plays in a big market like New York, I feel like because there's Cale Makar in the West Coast and Fox isn't as flashy, I feel like the conversation with Fox doesn't get spoken about so much as much as it should.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He's one of those players that I think at times you can take for granted a little bit. And then you look at the box score after, and it's like, oh, Adam Fox had 3 assists in this game, not to mention playing great defense. He defends odd man rushes, I think, about as good as any defenseman in the league. He's been awesome, and it's been interesting to see him play with Keandre Miller. We haven't really seen a lot of that in the past, at least not, with any regularity. So it's been an interesting pairing. Lindgren's back in the lineup. He's usually with Fox, but right now they're rolling with Fox and Miller, and thus far it's obviously been working, and I think that's reflected in their record. But do you want to go ahead and throw out a prediction for this game? Final score, anybody to get a goal for the Panthers. Anything you want to toss out there before we call it here?
Bobrovsky, Shesterkin, one goalie is for sure going to the Hall of Fame. Igor Shesterkin is on track for that. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to say Panthers pull out a road win because, I mean, this is the start of 2 straight weeks away from Sunrise with the New York trip of facing all 3 teams and then going to Finland for the Global Series against the Dallas Stars. So the Panthers really need to go out to a great start. So I'm going to say a 2-1 victory. It's not going to be easy because the Rangers, they have not scored less than 4 goals this season, but also the Panthers have not given up less than 3. So I'm gonna go a little bit different. But who knows? I could be old takes exposed after tomorrow's game. So who knows?
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where, despite those stats that you just mentioned, the Rangers scoring a lot of goals, the Panthers giving up a lot of goals, and the Panthers scoring a lot of goals in some instances as well. It does feel like this is a game that's going to kind of take on a little bit of a playoff feel to it. And on top of that, you've got 2 world-class goalies in net. So I'm going to say 3-2 Rangers. And as far as like somebody to score in this game, I'm going to say Riley Smith. Smith has really begun to click with Mika and Kreider. He seems to be building chemistry with them over the last handful of games here and coming off of a really strong couple of games in Toronto and in Montreal. So big game player throughout his career. He's produced in the playoffs. He's obviously a former Stanley Cup champion. I think he's going to come through with a big goal for the Rangers in this game. He scored in the last one, and if you're a Ranger fan, hopefully he can do it again. But we shall see.
Yeah, and it's going to be another exciting matchup as hopefully this is the first of a really good start to a road trip. As the Panthers, thankfully, the way the schedule is structured, they'll get a lot of those home games later on in the season, and it'll help them in their chances to once again win the Atlantic Division.
All right, I figure we can pretty much call it there for today. But Ranger fans, Panther fans, general hockey fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And Armando and I will see you next time.